Welcome back to the Artist Notepad, where we explore artistry, we talk life, and today we talk masculinity. I'm Jack.
And I'm David. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of our Deep Tan series. Today we're talking, as Jack just said, masculinity with just us today. But first, Jack, how you doing, my friend? How was your trip and this break that we had this week?
First off, David, I feel like I should ask you because you sound half asleep right now. Where's all the energy at?
Yeah, man. I mean, I guess I've been having a very tired or like very, very busy past week and two, especially last week while you were having an excellent time with Amelia somewhere. I had a super stressful gig, but at the same time, very enjoyable as well. Because it was a live stream, it was a recording, and it was a live performance as well. And we had an audience.
And it was a charity event. Let's
and
be
it
real.
was a charity event. So it was the first time doing 4 at once. Like I've helped out for different things, but like it was definitely, yeah, it was a stressful gig. But on the plus side, it was a good time. It was good to have, especially during a time of like a lot of bad news circling. It was really good to just do something good and give back to people and feed people that can't afford meals and stuff. So, and we smashed the target goal of $1,000. We reached $1,137, I think, from memory. So yeah, it's a plus, it's a win-win at the end, I think. But yeah, like enough about me. I want to hear about your trip, bro. Like how's your break we had a 1 week break, tan break. Yeah.
Well, first of all, shout out to everyone who got involved with that, including you, David. That's awesome work that you guys did and smashed that goal. So there's some hungry tummies that will, go sometime not being so hungry. So that's amazing.
Man. It was good.
Yeah, my trip was good, man. I just went away for a few days just up the coast with Amelia. It was good to, relax a little bit. The weather was actually really good for us, even though it's supposed to be cold. It was actually quite nice, like walking around in t-shirts and stuff. It was good.
Wow, yeah.
But it was really relaxed, man. We didn't really do much. Went for a bit of a walk here and there. But it was just to get away a little bit. But yeah, man. To be honest, bit of a crash coming home. Not just because being home. I don't know. It's just been a bit up and down lately. And I've been trying to be. For those of you who don't know, mental illness is a very important subject for me, and I've been trying to be a bit more open about my experience. So I thought today would be a good opportunity just to be completely honest and say that I'm having a bit of a tough time at the moment. Just been struggling a bit with day-to-day stuff. Not really anything in general happening that's gone wrong. Just, sometimes it's tough, and I just thought...
Yeah.
I just thought I'd share that, not to be self-indulgent, but just to,
just
if I'm
real.
so passionate about this thing, I want to talk about it and I want to show people that they can talk about it. And even though I shared barely anything there, just so people can see,
that's awesome. Yeah.
It's actually really entwined with what we're going to talk about today with masculinity. And I think an important part about that is being open and honest with your experience. And so that's where I'm at. I'm not going to tell you every week that I'm doing great, man, because, some weeks I'm not. We're real people too with real issues. I know now we're famous. People think that we're not real people anymore, but
we're basically celebrities, bro.
Like pretty much, But yeah, man, that's me. So it's good to be talking to you, man, because we went a week without chatting to each other and going every week talking to each other for 13, 14 weeks.
Yeah, bro.
That's pretty crazy. Hey,
it definitely felt like a bit
something missing, man.
Yeah, exactly. To be honest, though, I'm glad that we had the break at the same time, just because it was so busy last week. But at the same time, it just feels so good to be back and chat with you about deep tan stuff.
Tan pizza.
Yeah, you're not gonna stop with that joke, so I'll just let you have that joy.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's get into this. What do you say, David?
Let's get it. Masculinity, bro. This is a fat topic that we're gonna try unpack and just have a discussion about. But Yeah, should we start with similar to how we started the faith episode, maybe like a Google definition, internet search of what it means to, or what masculinity means? Could
Yeah,
you
man.
read that for us, Jack?
Absolutely. So, to be honest, very disappointing. Google's definition is qualities or attributes regarded as characteristic of men, and then underneath it says handsome, muscled, and driven. He's a prime example of masculinity.
Damn.
So straight away, like, this jumps out to me as being hugely problematic. But if we go down and we answer the frequent Google questions, there's another one that says, what do we mean by masculinity? And this one's even worse. This one basically says masculinity is the quality of manliness. Some traits of masculinity include physical strength, a muscular body, and facial hair.
Yeah.
And basically, the original definition of masculinity, for those who don't know, comes from a Latin word, and it basically means worthy of a male. So this idea says basically men who don't have muscular bodies, don't have facial hair, and aren't physically strong are not worthy of being a male.
Yeah. So you're not a male, Jack.
Sorry, Mr. Bearded over there. How could I forget your long beard that you've grown?
Yeah, mate.
You know,
You gotta keep up with the hair, bro. Come
yeah,
on, bro.
man. You've always been known for your facial hair, haven't you? Guess that means you're not a man
Sorry,
either.
bro.
Oh, damn.
You just kind of handed it to me. I had to do it. Sorry, bro. Put you on the spot there.
But yeah, like, it's, to
that's so
me, this is
interesting.
just so problematic, because like I feel like this, even though we're doing a lot to shake this misconception of what it means to be a man, like, you know, I feel like there is a lot of complaining about the way that certain men act, and those complaints are completely justified. Don't get me wrong, but if this is what people are like being taught, that's what it means to be a man, like, how can we blame them for acting in the abhorrent ways that they do? I mean, that's an exaggeration. I do blame them, and it is unacceptable. But like, I just feel like this is just wrong. Like, that men are being told that what it means to be a man is to be physically strong and to have facial hair and a muscular body, and like that's not like, I don't know, David, save me here, because I'm just so like flabbergasted that Google would say that this is what it means.
The right word. Yeah, I feel like the definition that this pop-up or this thing that we're reading and just looking at right now, it might have been something that was or is in the textbook / dictionary that hasn't been adjusted or adapted in the last maybe 50, 60 years. That's what I'm just guessing by reading it, because I feel like this definition is just it's too, like, it just doesn't make sense, because like as we just jokingly said, it just crosses us out as men, because we don't have we don't have muscles, and we're not
hey, speak for yourself there, man.
We don't have facial hair, like, it's kind of, and physical strength and like these type of things to be masculine. But I can see where it's coming from, so like it doesn't like put me in the position of like frustration or anger, but it definitely doesn't do justice of maybe what we see, or definitely what society sees as masculinity. But I feel like under the umbrella of masculinity, it's so broad in how people might define it, depending on your worldview / like the group that you're really in. Because like for me, myself, I am a Christian, so it's very shaped by what the word of God says. As to someone who's in the LGBTQI plus, they might define it very differently and talk about pronouns and such. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. How about to start off, how about we briefly both touch on, like, I know we said we're going to talk about like the Instagram question that we posted earlier today, but how about we briefly, just because you already touched on it already, talk about what you feel like is masculinity, and then maybe I'll go a bit, and then we'll jump into the Insta stuff on how people responded to the question.
Sure.
And we'll go from there. Yeah.
Well, I think there was a response somewhat similar to what I'm about to say, but for me, the idea of breaking things up into masculine and feminine, it actually becomes a little bit problematic for me, because I'm not someone who would disregard genders as and say we're all the same gender. I'm not someone who would say that, but I would say that the idea that masculine traits are exclusive to men and feminine traits are exclusive to women, I actually completely disagree with that. And I think that, once again, it becomes really problematic for young men trying to discover what it means to be a man when they see feminine traits. Well, let me look this up while I'm talking, but I'm pretty sure what I'm going to get is things like nurturing and care,
compassion, maybe.
Yeah, femininity definition.
What does it say? I'm
Okay, so we've got
says.
gentleness, empathy, humility, and sensitivity. And so, David, before I even go to you, I would just say that I strive to be all those things. Okay, so
all of this. Say it again.
Yes.
Read it one more time for us.
Gentleness, empathy, humility, and sensitivity. So I would like to say that I'm all those things. I hope that people would say that about me, but I can't be sure. I'm sure some people might. Some people would say no.
Yeah.
But like, my point is that, say a young man, or a boy, let's say he gets curious and looks up what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman, and he finds that femininity is all these things: gentleness and compassion, and I forgot what are the sensitivity, things like this.
Yeah.
Why would he want to be those things if he's being told, well, that's actually what women do? Men have to be physically strong, and they have to have facial hair. Like, it's just wrong. And it's like, some people might be more confident in themselves to decide like that they don't have to apply to one of these categories. But some people might feel like they say you get bullied for being short or something, then you might internally start to believe, okay, I'm not a man, and so then they start to move away from anything that could be associated with femininity.
Right.
And these things that are saying that they're feminine, these are human traits that we should all have, and it's quite ironic, I think, that when some people, like, we discussed this beforehand, and I said I wouldn't use this term because I don't like it, but the term toxic masculinity, I don't like that term because and you don't either, because it's a label, and it can sometimes be used to make men feel bad about being men. Now, I'm not saying that there's no such thing as toxic behavior, but I would say that that's what it is. It's toxic humanity rather than toxic femininity, and it's possible that it shows up more in men than women. Okay, so now I've got that out of the way. My point is that I would say that the sort of women who would use that towards a man, what they're talking about is a lack of these things, a lack of sensitivity, a lack of gentleness, and an obsession with their bodybuilding figure and their facial hair and all, like the sort of things that these definitions tell us that that's what a man's supposed to be, are the things that when men have nothing but those, women say that they're toxic. And they are toxic, but like they're being told that this is what they should be. So as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this because it's incredibly frustrating for me when I see like a big problem in society and it's not being addressed. Like, how can these definitions, like David, you said that maybe that's 60 years old. Well, they've had 60 years to change that. Yeah. And I would also say it's not 60 years because that's a Google definition, and so Google hasn't been around that long. So
keep going. Sorry.
I just find it horrible that someone who would be vulnerable to being told what it means to be a man and doesn't have a good understanding because maybe they haven't been told that growing up, or maybe they're being bullied because they're not man enough, or they get told man up, and then they think that they have to be more like these things. And that's not what we need. We need more people with these compassionate traits. And so back to my original point, sorry, I've gone on a massive rant, but basically to bring it back,
please keep going.
My point is that by splitting these things into masculine and feminine, I think people get confused and think, and rightly so, because it is confusing. I think people get confused and think, so this is what I have to be. And in reality, I think that everyone has a blend of masculinity and femininity in them. That's why people say, oh, he's getting in touch with his feminine side. Now, I have a problem with the fact that no one ever says she's getting in touch with her masculine side.
Masculine side,
Yeah, but the fact is that these things, we should have a balance of both, you know? I don't think that they're antonyms, but I also don't think that they are the same. But I just have a problem in the way that they're used. And until we can find a way to healthily use these terms, I just don't like using them at all, because I don't want someone to feel like they have to be a certain way because of what gender they are.
Interesting. I definitely agree with you in a lot of what you said, because before we got on the call and we started recording for the pod today, like as we're having this conversation, I had the chance to talk about what it means to masculinity with two brothers from my church. But shout out to Lauren, shout out to Paul, if you guys are listening. If you're not, then you guys are dogs. Yeah, it was interesting because Lawrence, he threw me a question of like, I was just sharing with them this is what we're going to talk about tonight, blah, 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 blah. And then I said to them, like, what do you guys reckon? Like, what is masculinity? What do you guys think it is? And because we all share the same Christian worldview and like beliefs and views on it, we shared a lot of opinions. But when I look at the list of things that come to mind of like being a man, like a like a man defined in the Bible, I feel like similar to what you said, there's a lot of crossover. And then the only thing that I can really think about is that I would like to mention or point out is the difference in roles inside a marriage or between a man and a woman that are complementarian. So it's the acceptance or the view that men are this is going to be tricky to put out just because a lot of people might disagree what I'm about to say, but it's like men are the head of the house, but not in the sense of like a dictatorship or authoritative thing where it's like what they say is absolute, but more so like they would be the one first to take care of the family and take initiative when it comes to protecting the family or their wife. Like it says in Ephesians chapter 5 verse 23 to 24, but for husbands is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. But if we read up to there, I think there's going to be a lot of angry faces or angry people just if you cut up to that point. But the point that I want to stress out is verse 25, where it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So the duty of being a man in the Christian sense is that it's a sacrificial type of love and a initiative of protection. So I feel like you can even edit all this out, but the point is there's a story that is said by a famous pastor named John Piper, but it's talking about what it means to be a man, or he explains it in this way, but it's like so a man and a woman, they go out on a date, right? And as the man is walking the woman home, they bump into three hooligans, basically like thugs, and they see the woman and the man walking across the street, and they call out to them and say, hey, keep in mind the pastor's really old, so I don't know how he said it like this, but it's like, hey, pretty girl you got there, give her to us, or something like that. And then the man responds by saying, over my dead body. It's like this corniest movie line or whatever.
Whoa.
But the
that's what it means to be a man.
No, but the point here is that the woman is actually, like in the story, in this context, it's like the woman is actually like the highest degree of black belt in karate, right? So in a logical sense, the woman is very capable of being able to defend herself and maybe even fight the three guys better than the man. But what he's saying of being a man is being able to lay yourself down and to have that initiative and that instinct to protect your other self, your woman, your family, your friends, like the ones that you care about and you love. And I think that kind of encaptures what it means to be in one sense, to be a good man in any case. But yeah, that's something I wanted to mention. But yeah, that's the only thing that would come to mind when it's like, what it means to be a man. But yeah, I don't know. Like there was a bit of a tangent there. I feel like a lot of it. Yeah, but yeah.
I've heard that Christian view before. My issue with it is just that at a time that was absolutely the case, but as time has changed, like women's role in society has changed, and this isn't me attacking you. Let me be clear, David. This isn't me attacking you. Please keep going. Because this might come across as a bit aggressive, but women don't need to be protected to the same level anymore. Like women are still more vulnerable than men in some areas, but that's due to flaws in our society, not due to their inherent weakness or fragility. So I don't see that as a inherent male role in a relationship, because I think that both man and woman, or man and man, or woman and woman, both parties of a relationship have a responsibility to protect and serve. And I know that I'm not trying to say that, David, you were saying that women are just there to serve and be protected. I'm not saying that you were saying that. I find what is said there problematic, and I do acknowledge that it is followed up with the bit that people who are against what it says in the Bible never include, which is the bit about the man loving the woman like he would love Jesus, or like Jesus would love him. But
like Jesus,
sorry, did I say that right?
Yeah, so like as Jesus would love the church and he would lay his life down. So the comparison is Jesus loving people and loving the church is what the man should reflect in his relationship with the wife. Is as Christ laid his life down for the church, the man should be laying his life down for his wife. So I
suppose what I'm saying is that I agree with all that, but I don't think that is exclusive to men. I think that women have an obligation to do exactly the same for their male counterpart in the relationship, whatever type of relationship that is. I think that that is a sign of human goodness rather than male goodness. And I guess like the issue with my view on this is that pretty much whatever you say, or what anyone says about a good trait, I either think that trait is wrong and that's not a important trait, like having a muscular body. That's not an important trait. Or I just don't think I think that trait is universal and should be carried as a responsibility by both parties, by both genders, by anyone, like regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, their age. Like it doesn't, obviously if you're very young, like you get off the hook a little bit, but I think that parents should be raising their kids to take responsibility in all aspects of their relationships. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, I'm talking about any relationship. And that they don't, that men aren't being raised to protect women as their primary role, because women need to be protected, and women aren't being raised to be a kitchen maid. And once again, that's not what you're saying, but I think that there is a view in some parts of the Christian community, some parts, not all parts, that is still the expectation, is that the woman is the birth giver and the maid, and the husband is the breadwinner. And it's just
I don't know if that does it justice to like generalize it, but I guess like there definitely is some roles within a marriage or a household that the Bible views. And I definitely understand what you're saying when it's like
to be clear, I'm not actually saying that the Bible tells them to do that. I'm just saying that that's how people choose to interpret it. Some people.
Sure. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just agreeing with you in the sense that, like, it's hard to put that into today's society in some cases because of as you said, like what women are able to do and be. Like, even in an example of like my family, my mom is actually like the breadwinner. So in the biblical sense, or like in being like, so my dad is, I would say my dad is still head of the house as like the male or the husband or the father figure of the household. But technically my mom is the breadwinner because my dad isn't physically able to work. And mom is the one who's always out hustling and working because, so if I was to share very briefly, my dad has polio on his left leg. And he's had that all his life. So he's just he has a disability so that he can't move and he can't stand for very long. So mom was always the one hustling and going out and bringing the bread home. You know what I mean? So yeah, even if we look at like our family and we say we're Christians, it's like roles are, so in some ways it feels like it's reversed. But does that mean that we're not, not living to our faith or something? Like, no, that doesn't mean it's like that. Does that make my dad less of a man? No, I don't think so. No, does that make my mama less of a woman? Like, no, I don't think so. But yeah, I know what you're saying. But yeah, I feel like one thing that I want to like just to mention now so that we don't forget later is because I know that we want to go look at the Instagram
sorry, we're holding out on you guys.
Yeah, but let's revisit the topic because you were briefly mentioning it of like fathers being a role in shaping their son's view in certain things, or like you were touching on it a bit. But
let's come to that later. Let's come to, because once we talk about the false ideas more and how, like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, let's come back to it.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Let's come back to it. Yeah. So do you want to start going through some of the Instagrams?
Yeah.
Just pick a few. Do you want to start? I don't know who they're from, so
yeah, we'll keep it anonymous.
Yeah.
But,
okay. Ooh. So the first one that jumps out to me is taking responsibility.
Taking responsibility.
What do you think? What do you think, David?
So, do I think it's mutually exclusive? No, I don't think it's like, I don't think it's something that, just a man should do. Like, taking responsibility, I think it like just like, because there's no real context behind it, I'm guessing the person is saying like in work, in the family, in, you know what I mean? In the relationships, in all that
That's
they
actually
do.
not how I interpreted it.
Oh, interesting.
I took it as like, if you make a mistake or if you screw up, take responsibility for your actions and like hold yourself accountable, I guess. Yeah,
but I'm saying that in these areas. So taking responsibility in, because that would include, just say in the workplace,
sure.
If someone was to make like that man was, or the person was to make a problem or an issue, they did something wrong, then you take responsibility, of course. So like, that's what I'm thinking this person meant when they said this. But yeah,
I do find it interesting that a lot
like,
of these,
that's what a man is like. That's the first thing this person came
sort
to
of.
kind of
Also the fact that like a lot of these, I think if you ask the person, do you think women need to take responsibility too? I think they would straight away say yes. And I think that's interesting. I think that subconsciously, I feel like a lot of people are sort of kind of thinking similar things to what I'm thinking in terms of like these things in this day and age, they are no longer like gender exclusive, And so currently, I think not everyone, but I think more and more people's ideas of what it means to be a man, what it means to have masculinity, are beginning to be the similar traits that we would say what it means to be feminine as well.
Like, yes, perhaps. Yeah, like, even to just like expand on that point, like similar to what I was just like mentioning earlier when you were when you had your initial rant of like
Yeah, my
what Google was
soapbox.
saying. Yeah. Before you got off your soapbox, well, you were saying how, yeah, like it's shared, and definitely I feel like, so one of the points that I was talking about with my friends earlier today was like a man should be strong and loving. And when I said that, even though like that was one of the first few things that came to mind when I was thinking about what a man should be like, when I took a step back after my friend asked me like, is that just for males though, or like just for men? And the answer I came to was like, no, it's like women should be strong and loving in as well, like, and they're able to be strong and loving. But I think the reason why it came to mind when it's like strong and loving is I feel like they come hand in hand. Like like when I say men should be strong and loving, I mean they should be strong enough to like a view of, or the sign of like strength that I can see in men, where I look at someone and it's like, wow, that's a strong and loving man, is when they're able to sacrifice for people that they love or care about, when they're able to express and guide and nurture and share and share experiences and pains and joys together with someone, like with people that they care about. I feel like when I see those type of traits in men, I'm like, that's a strong and godly man, or that's a strong man, or you know what I mean, a loving man. But yeah, at the same time, it's like, man, women can be yeah.
It's because you've just touched on something there, which I do want to come back to, the idea of men, you know, being vulnerable around people, like being able to share like what they feel, even regardless of what that negative feeling is. But before we come back to that, I just want to I want to touch on one more of the Instagram ones, because this one, it's funny because reading this one, this is mostly about what my rant was before, which is this person says, the difference between being a man and woman is not that big. Gender stereotypes make it a bigger difference than it is. Yet masculinity is defined as a strong yet vulnerable figure who stands up for themselves. And I would totally agree with this person in the sense that I know plenty of women who are strong yet vulnerable, and they stand up for themselves. And I think that just goes to show, you know, like, I totally agree that men should be like this, don't get me wrong. But this is like, maybe we should just be talking more about like what we expect from humans, you know, instead of saying what we expect from men and what we expect from women. Because if these things tend to be the same, then why are we being unnecessarily divisive in the way that we deliver the message? Why can't we hold everyone to... I'm sure I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm sure there are maybe some traits which are gender specific, but I can't think of any now. But in general, why can't we just hold people to the same standards? I feel like that would be one of the easiest ways to call out equality and call out sexism, is if we're all being held to the same standards, you know? Instead of splitting it up into masculine and feminine, like when it would seem as though both, well, I and seemingly a few of the people who responded to our question seem to think that there isn't much difference at all, even if they don't realize that that's what they're thinking. The things that they're listing line up with what most of our ideas of what it means to be feminine are as well. So there seems to be quite a, like, more than just correlation between the two.
I think the only thing that comes to mind, and I think people who are listening and have a very strong opinion on this might disagree with me once again, but one, I guess, like, difference that we can see in certain areas in the world or life is that there are physical differences in men and women. Definitely physical differences. And like, I guess, like, it's starting to slowly make more sense why muscular and the like facial hair came into the definition in Google, is because, like, if we look at sporting, we have that distinction of men and women because men are just physically stronger and built differently than to women. That's why we have the differences in like women's swimming or women's running or women's basketball versus like there's just like NBA or like NRL versus like women's football is because men are just built differently in terms of like muscle density, testosterone, and these hormones that are in the body. You know what I mean? So I
But
guess
David, I'm sure that you wouldn't be someone who would look at someone who maybe is lacking those traits and think any differently of them as a man or as a woman.
of course, but I'm just saying like um just like it just came to mind or like realization that there are physical differences or there's clear differences between a man and a woman um that we can visibly see or like we see in the world right now. Because if there was no distinction of men and women, and it was instead just like a shared arena of competition when it comes to sporting events, I think
Sure.
it would look very different to how, like just say combat sport. If in a heavyweight fight, a 225 pound man or like 250 300 pound man versus like a similar weight woman, I don't know if we're going to see the same type of competition or result. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't have a clue. If they're the same
Yeah.
weight, I wouldn't actually know. I would.
I don't know.
My initial
yeah.
reaction would be to say that it would be even, but
Cool.
I'm not.
Let's
I'm not.
see.
That's probably
'Cause,
just a
like,
bad example, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah. Look, I agree with you. That it's kind of ironic, really, that I don't go back on what I said. I do think that these definitions are problematic, but it is kind of ironic that they are some of the few differences that we can actually pinpoint at this time between,
Yeah.
you know, your average man and your average woman. Sorry, the big
Yeah.
difference is their physical appearance.
Yeah.
But interesting, yeah. Anyway, David, do you want to run back because I did want to return to this idea of vulnerability in terms of men being able to feel like they can talk about some of the things that are tough going on for them.
Yeah. So I was gonna. Well, it's good that you mentioned that because that was one of the Facebook responses. Because like the question that we put on Facebook, not Facebook, Instagram, was what is your definition of being a man? And it's just as you were just saying. It's like as if you were reading this person's response because this person legit said being able to be vulnerable without feeling like you're forfeiting your masculinity.
There you
So
go.
it's like being vulnerable to share, what you're going through with another man or even a woman, like being able to share what you're actually going through without feeling like you're less of a man. You know what I mean? But yeah, did you want to start us off or?
Well, it's interesting you touched on that because I don't think this is a gender specific problem in the sense I do think plenty of women struggle to talk about some of their negative feelings as well. I think it's in general like there is a lot of stigma surrounding mental illness, and what I was sort of touching on earlier on when like I shared a little bit about how I'm going at the moment, how everything isn't puppy dogs and rainbows at the moment in my life. Like I think that like that's hard, you know, that doesn't come naturally for me. And that was something that I had to sort of force myself to do. And it would be so much easier for me to just say, yeah, man, I'm good. I just had a great holiday, which I did.
Right.
And just say like, yeah, I've been great. Like, and then just move on, you know, but, I at least want to do what I can, my part in terms of normalizing the fact that sometimes we're not always okay, man, and that I don't see that as a sign of weakness. You know, I find the correlation with strength and struggle to be absolute. You know, I always use the analogy when I'm talking about this in terms of like the guys at the gym. You know, it doesn't matter how big the dude is or how big the woman is. You know, like at the end of the day, like when they're on their last set, when they're on the biggest, heaviest weight, they're struggling, man. They are struggling. They might be shaking, like they'll be sweating and everything. Their heart will be pumping. Like that's not a sign of weakness, but it is a sign of struggle. So that there isn't actually a correlation. In fact, if anything, it's a sign of strength that they're pushing through when they're hurting. And so I would say that talking about this stuff, there's this big misconception about what it means to be struggling, what it means to be in pain, what it means to not always have like the best mental well-being, you know? And I think that that's partly because of the way that we look at things as a society these days. It's so results focused, we always just look at where we are, like, and that is a result. That's a fact, we don't look at it as part of a process. We can't look at it and say, why am I feeling like this?
Right.
It's actually because I'm dealing with a lot of stuff, or it's because I'm suffering with depression. And people who suffer with depression, they sometimes just feel bad, and they don't have to have a reason. They just feel down, they feel depressed, and it comes on in waves without any more of a trigger. Like, there can be triggers, but sometimes there isn't. It's just fluctuations that they can't control, and so it really saddens me that there are people out there who feel like they can't talk about this stuff. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that it is more of a issue for men. And I think that that's borne out in the suicide rates. Men are, I think it's 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women. And I think part of that is the fact that men feel like they can't talk, so they can never release this. And the only exit they feel like they have is to commit suicide, and that is a tragedy. And David, I'm sure you've had experiences in terms of like mates who are struggling things that you didn't even realize. Because I have that. I've had mates that have been going through stuff, and I've had no idea.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's cool that you mentioned that, because even just yesterday, before us having this conversation, I caught up with a friend that is one of my closest mates, and I won't name him because I don't know how comfortable he'll be with me sharing this, but he's a friend that I've known for, we just calculated and we realized that we've known each other for like 10 years.
Wow.
Right? And this friend of mine, we've gone through a lot of stuff, pretty much like puberty, our adolescent stage, and like outside of high school. And then throughout this whole time, we've been sharing life together, checking up on each other. Our parents and our families know each other. But only yesterday, once I started digging deep into, I always check up on him on like family, friends, like relationships, see if he's actually seeing anyone, like women, or like, you know what I mean? Like he's always on Tinder or something, but I'm like, bro, you're wasting time. And he's like, oh, I just do it for fun, whatever. But then, and like work or his future, and like, I feel like I cover all these areas that I feel like are questions that we have as young men. And one thing that I never even thought about or considered is maybe he's going through something that he's not comfortable sharing or anything like that. But yesterday, when I spent so much time with him, I dug deep enough to a point where he was comfortable enough to just start openly talking about things. And he shared with me something that was quite a shock to me. And it was that from 2 years or a year ago, he started having these moments during like once or twice a year where he would feel so heavily burdened in his like heart, or like this huge weight on his shoulders, and this overwhelming feeling of like emptiness, and just like just sucked out of any emotion, and he didn't feel like doing anything, and he would just like either sleep it off and then the next day he will feel better. But he shared with me that for the first time ever, like this year, he started having it a lot more frequently, and now it's been going for a little bit longer. And he shared that like, you know, like he's going through depression, like it's a serious thing. And before he ever was able to have these open conversations, he used to question people, or men or women who go through, or just people in general who go through depression and who aren't able to, or who go to the point of thinking suicidal thoughts, of like taking their own lives. And he always used to think like, how bad could it possibly be to even get to that point and think of taking your life as an answer? And he said for the first time in his life, he came to understand what that feeling was, because he was trying to assess his situation. He was like, as you said, a very goal-driven and like result-driven society and lifestyle that we live, that when reaching that goal or that result isn't enough, or like once you reach that point you start to question what's next, or like you start doubting yourself, or you have all these thoughts. And yeah, it was so shocking to me as a friend who's like one of my closest friends, to see him in a position where it's like, you know, like he was suffering and was helpless and was just struggling. And for someone that I knew so well to like not be able to see he was going through something like that, it would put me in such a position where it's like, wow, like it's so real. And at the same time, like if a person's going through something like that, they could become so helpless.
Yeah.
Like I thought I'll be the first person who would like ring up and be like, hey, like I really need to talk to you right now, or something like that. But yeah, he was sharing how like he just started downplaying his struggle and his pain and his suffering, and thinking there's kids in Africa who are like dying from like starving, and like there's people really actually starving, like suffering in this world. Like I'm not going through anything. And he started like downplaying and undermining his suffering. And I told him, like, you shouldn't do that, you know? Like when you're struggling or suffering, it's a real thing. You shouldn't just try to bottle it up or like sweep it down under the rug, because it's like it's gonna eat you up, you know what I mean? So yeah, man, like
it's I think what a lot of people don't realize about suicide is suicide doesn't just happen because people decide that it's the best choice. They decide it because they feel like it's their only choice. It's their only option left. And the only reason why someone would feel like it's their only option left is because they think that there's no one around them who can help them. And to an extent, I do see it as our responsibility as people to make those around us to feel like they can share. But at the same time, if you don't know, it's so hard, you know, like David, what you were just like telling me, it's like, to me, it's just such a tragedy that someone could be that low and feel like they can't tell anyone, they can't talk to anyone about it. And even if like, or they can only talk to one person about it, they can only talk to the people who are closest to them. And like I say that, and yet I still struggle sometimes to tell people about my experiences with it. In truth, I've struggled with mental illnesses since I was in about 7th grade. So, yeah, it's almost 10 years for me now. And, I haven't told heaps of people about it. I feel like I've told enough, you know. I don't go around telling every single person, because it is personal struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm now saying it on a podcast, but I'm saying it because I want people to see, like if anyone out there hears this and thinks worse of me because of me having suffered, then tell me, because I don't believe that there's anyone who would think that. And I think that goes to show that, like, for those of us who are suffering out there, like, no one with a good heart is going to think that you're weak because of it. You know, you don't need to struggle by yourself. And I do, it does break my heart that there is a level of pressure on men in our society to say that you can't be the sensitive one. You know, you have to be the strong, masculine, muscly one with great facial hair. You know, like, it's just, I mean, this is why this is happening, man. This is why we're losing so many men every year. So many women too, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's clearly more of an issue in with men in society if 4 times the amount of men are committing suicide than women. Because it's not that 4 times as many men are suffering with mental health issues. That's not the case. As far as I'm aware, I think that's fairly even, or a lot closer in terms of statistics. So it's not just like, well, there's more men suffering, so that's why there's more men committing suicide. It's like a similar amount of people suffering, but for some reason men are 4 times more likely to feel as though suicide is their best option, you know?
Yeah. And it's sometimes having these type of conversations, I think some parts that might even stop people from having to approach someone is A, maybe they don't have anyone, but at the same time, I think B, like, it's because either they feel burdened that, or like they don't feel safe in sharing that kind of load or baggage with someone else and thinking that they won't have the answers as well. So it's like, but I feel like what I told my friend and what he understands now as well is that it just felt so freeing and so good to be able to share that that baggage, that burden with someone, even though he knew that I did not have the answers, or another friend, close friend that he shared this with didn't have the answers. He was able to put it out there and like be able to process the thoughts that he was having just internally by himself. It's different when you end up sharing it and being open to another friend or someone who's close to you or that you trust, because it's like it puts you in a position, a mental state where it's like you're not alone in this situation that you're going through. Even having that reassurance of like there's someone else that's there for you or there to just listen to you about your struggles and your issues it could be enough sometimes. And so like to those listening right now that Jack so bravely just shared what he's been going through for since like year 7, you said. So it's like, as you said, like 10 years. Thanks for sharing that, man. It's like
all right. I feel like really, I can't keep talking about this stuff and be a hypocrite and keep my struggles to myself. Because I just want to reiterate, I hope I don't need to, but I feel, part of me feels like I need to, is that I'm not sharing this as a form of coping or as a form of like self-indulgence. I'm sharing this because I want to start, showing people that it's okay, and that like, as I said, please, if you like think wrongly of me for sharing what I said, and if you think worse of me, please message me. Like I'm serious. Please message me, because I believe that that people would only think. I believe that either people wouldn't change their opinion or they would think better of you for having like the strength to deal with this stuff, because like it takes a lot of strength to deal with this stuff, and that's not just talking about me. That's talking about everyone. Like it's drawn upon all the strength that I have to deal with this stuff at times in my life. So like if you do like have a problem with me saying what I've said, then message me, because I think, first of all, I think that is an important thing to talk about. Second of all, show me that I'm wrong, because I don't want to like I don't want to put people wrong, but I'm 99 point whatever like recurring like percent sure that this is going to be fine, and you can do this, and it's only going to do positive things, or it won't change anything. So you may as well give it a shot.
Anyways, reach out to us, man. Like I feel like we're both very like accepting and empathetic people to a certain extent, that we're willing to have these type of meaningful conversations with other people too. Like we're able to talk on a podcast like this and share our opinions and thoughts on these deeper issues, because like it's real. These are real world, real life issues, and I feel like it would be unloving and hypocritical if we're just talking to ourselves, like us two, but if a listener's out there and doesn't have someone to talk to, and
please do.
They want to talk to us, and we say no, then I feel like that's just messed up.
We won't.
Yeah, just email us, DM one of us, or whatever. But to segue, I want to go towards. So this is like, maybe like I'll throw the question at you, because I want to hear what your story about this is like. But we touched upon it briefly. But how much do you reckon our fathers play a role in shaping our view on masculinity and what it means to be a man?
So, absolutely. I
absolutely.
I wouldn't even. I wouldn't stop at fathers. I would say all the important men in your life have an influence on you in terms of how you feel like you can act. Because if it's someone you look up to, then the way that they act will influence the way that you feel like you should act. For sure. And so, for most of us, we at least spend some of our lives looking up to our fathers. Others have falling outs, but I think it's pretty common for a boy, at least at some point in their life, maybe their whole life, to look up to their father. And so the way our fathers act, there's a huge link between how we perceive men and how we perceive to act. And I would say that this is equally important for young girls or for women growing up. The way their father acts and the way their father treats them will hugely impact on the way that they feel men are, the way they feel their value is as a woman compared to the value of a man. And so I would say that as parents, just this in general, but specifically on masculinity, my dad's side comes from Jamaica, and so it's quite a conservative country a lot of the time. They're very traditional in some areas, and so definitely, I think my grandfather is he would meet some of the stereotypes in the way that he struggles to be emotional around
Right.
men and struggles to talk about this sort of stuff. I think it's something my dad struggles with too, but he's a lot better at it than my grandfather. I'll say that at least. I don't feel like he holds back from me in terms of being vulnerable, but I do think that it's a challenge for him, and I would say it's a challenge for the majority of his generation, and even more so for the generation before. I've always sort of been my own person. Like I definitely have like taken things from both my parents, but I think they would be the first ones to say that I've always been someone who has gone my own way, and if I thought that something that they were doing was wrong or offensive, then I would be one of the first people to call them out on it, and I'm sure that they tell you that too. So like
you're like 6 years old and be like, here's where you're wrong, Dad. And Mom,
I don't
please.
do that. I don't do that as a place of judgment necessarily, but I think it's important to call people out when they're doing something that you might think is offensive or insensitive, as a form of education as much as anything else. Like, just as they educate us, we grow up and we grow up in a different world to them. And as the world's changing, there are things that younger people can experience that their parents don't. And this isn't me saying that I'm constantly calling them out on stuff. Like, they're pretty good, but I feel like I'll be the same when I'm a dad. I feel like there'll be some things that I'll need to be basically called out on by my kids, and they'll say, Dad, don't be such a whatever. I won't be able to move with the same fluidity that the youth are able to do, growing up in a constantly progressing world. So, in answer to your question, David, yes, I would absolutely say so. I would say me maybe less than others. It's not the particularly most satisfying question, but I definitely have been. I definitely think that if my dad was more reserved and more conservative, I think that would be reflected in me. Maybe not extremely so, but I think that would be there. I think I'd be a little bit less forthgiving in my information about my feelings, and I think that what I've just talked about would be significantly harder to talk about. What about you? What's your experience with that?
I also say 100% yes. Because I definitely agree with you when you say important men had shaped what I believe to be what I feel like a man should be like, and what masculinity means to me. But because for myself, I grew up in a household or a father who isn't able to express that type of love and have that communication with me. I had zero to no guidance growing up. So mom was never home. Mom was always out hustling, and dad was helping out and hustling at home where he could, and then helping out at the shop, and that's a whole story there. But so because he would never have those type of conversations or guidance in what I should look for in the future, what I have to start thinking about, or even as a child, having no encouragement or that, encouraging, loving type of environment. I think I grew up as a kid who had a lot of self-doubt, and I grew up with not knowing what I really like, not knowing what I should try to do, but I was more of just a class clown, have fun, just goofy, like troublesome kid.
Do you
But
think that was like looking for something, some kind of approval?
yeah,
or something?
so I think that was me just trying to have attention and approval and have people like have a reaction towards me, giving me affirmation for what I'm doing and
Yeah,
whatever.
sure, yeah.
But and at the same time, I grew up thinking of that. I'm not going to use the term, but like basically a lot of aggression and a lot of like not being able to stand up for yourself and show that other men can't step on you. So pretty much like a dominant, like a aggressive, like a fighting type of instinct where it's like you can't say what you want to say to me. You can't show me that you're above me. Like you can't show me you're more alpha than me. That type of mindset, even growing up as a kid. So
Yeah.
growing up, I would get into fights all the time and detention and stuff like that because it's like, yeah, I thought that was a form of showing like I'm a man. Like you can't do what you want to do over me, and like that alpha, that type of, you know what I mean? Like that's the type of, because that's what I saw in like cartoons or movies or what,
which is
like,
important as well when it comes to like taking like role models and stuff. Like
Yeah.
the sort of stereotypical man in TV and movies is like a lot of the time that's just as harmful. You know, that
yeah.
action hero
like-
who's like doing
yeah.
reckless things and
If you
and
if
like,
you're growing up watching like Ninja Turtles then or Naruto or like stuff like that, it's like you put yourself in that like alpha or like hero type of
there's good stuff
mindset.
there too, man. Though I firmly believe that like superhero stuff helps shape my like idea of helping people. I strongly believe that.
For sure. But I think it was misguided in a sense because it was narrow, because it's like the good guys are my friends, the bad guys are people who aren't my friends. So I think there was a part of that in me, and yeah, so that's the type of, so I never had guidance from my dad. Instead, once I got older, I got in like my image and my view on what a man should be like was shaped by older brothers. So people who are like couple to like 5-6 years older than me, or leaders in the church, or like pastors, or books or articles, or you know, like YouTube even. Like those became the forms of mediums that gave me
thank God you
guidance.
found those resources, man. Like no, I'm serious. I'm deadly serious. Like some people might not have like access to that sort of stuff, and like if they're in the same place as you but without access to more positive role models, then like they'd stay that way.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, like this was still like, high school was still a bad stage for me because like I was getting all the wrong.
It doesn't happen overnight,
influences,
you know, that transition doesn't happen overnight.
Of course. And then later on, it was more so church and the Bible and books and stuff. But yeah,
Jesus is the superhero.
Interesting. Yeah, that's the end of the story pretty much, because it's like for me it's like I just want to be like Jesus. Like that's the goal. But yeah, 100%. I feel like fathers play a huge role in shaping what young men or boys see as being a man. And yeah, it's just like, I understand that like for my dad's case, it was like because he grew up without that kind of environment, he wasn't able to provide me with the same thing. His way of showing me that he cares was to take me to taekwondo classes and put me in swimming classes and try to make me play an instrument, or that's it. Like he tried to force me to play piano. I didn't like piano. He made me try to play basketball. I'm like, I don't like basketball. He tried to make me play guitar. I'm like, I don't like guitar. He's like, what the heck do you like? Like I'm trying to like love you. And I'm like, I don't know myself. And then he's just like, nah, do this, do that kind of thing. But
sad.
Yeah, but it's like that was his only form of showing that he cared for me, was like taking me places, trying to make me do things, giving me things. But what I needed most was just guidance and love, and like a conversation about, this is what you have to look forward to, and this is what is going to happen after you get to this age. And yeah, so sorry, I kind of ranted there a bit.
No, it was good. It was good. It was a much better answer than mine was. I was just like, yeah, not really, eh?
No. I liked your answer. It was honest. You were like, I was a man since I was 6, and I knew what it was going to be.
That's not what I was saying.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
But yeah, I think this has been a really good conversation, David. And I think we've actually tapped into a lot more stuff than we initially planned to. But I think it was all really good stuff, really important stuff. And I like the fact that it was, I think, incredibly universal. Like, I think that the only stuff that was specific to men was also translatable for women and mothers, for example, or just like women and their fathers. Like, so I think that this ended up being an incredibly inclusive conversation, which I think is a trait of masculinity. Look at us, David, changing the world one podcast at a time.
Wow. Nice, man. I mean, yeah, is that the sign to kind of start wrapping things up? Is that
I reckon, man. We've cracked the hour, so I reckon let's wind it up. Sure
thing. I feel like there's so many like every time it's not that like I feel bad doing an episode, but there's just so much to cover and talk about in this limited time. But yeah, I'm glad that we had a conversation about
this. Can just be a starter of the dialogue, because as we said, guys, like, reach out to us, please. So I'll just list off our socials now, because this is where you can reach us. You can find us at Instagram at The Artist Notepad. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Artist Notepad. Or you can email us at artistnotepad@gmail.com. And guys, please reach out to us. Let us know what you thought about this conversation. DM us. You can find David and my personal contacts on Instagram on our Instagram page, which once again is at The Artist Notepad. So please check us out. Follow us if you haven't. Also, give us a review, please. I know we haven't asked for a while, but it does really help the progression of the show. It helps, like, the way that other people find the show is through reviews. So please give us a 5-star written review, and you might just win a Funko Pop. You never know. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I really enjoyed this episode, David. It's been a great return to form.
Yeah, bro. I felt like, as you said before we started, maybe it would be a bit rusty, but at the same time, like, we're professionals. We've been in the business in this game for a long time. Yeah. You know what it is. But yeah. Nah, sweet, man. I think that's it. Let's see if we're missing anything. Are we missing anything?
Just a reminder, I guess, that extension that we gave before, like, please feel free to message David and I if any of this stuff has really resonated with you and you feel like maybe now is a time where you could talk to someone. Please talk to us, or please, like, use any of the resources available to you. David, let's put some links in the description for some resources that people can reach out to if they're struggling with their mental health. And we'll stick some stuff in there, guys. So please, if you're someone who feels like you are struggling to talk, like, talk to me and David. It's just the first step. We'll do nothing but show you care and reach out to one of these professional services, and you'll be in great hands. So thanks so much for joining in, guys. Like, I hope you've enjoyed your week off. Yeah.
It felt good. My heart feels full. That was a meaningful thing, you know?
Yeah,
that was a deep nice. Tan, if you ask me.
Deep tan pizza.
That's a deep tan pizza right there. But anyways, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll catch you next episode. Peace.
Peace.